This is paltering, the active use of truthful statements to deliberately mislead, and it's the most common, most effective, and least understood form of psychological manipulation in the modern world. Forget what you think you know about lying. The most dangerous liars never say a single false word. They don't need to. They've mastered the art of weaponizing truth itself through a technique that resembles equivocation but goes much deeper. And a landmark Harvard study revealed that more than half of business executives admit to doing it regularly. The worst part, most of them believe they're being honest. Let's start at the beginning. The word palter first appeared in English around 1548 in the writings of John Bale, the Bishop of Ossory. Back then, it meant something simple, to mumble indistinctly, to babble. But within a few decades, the word had transformed into something far darker. By the 1580s, palter meant to act insincerely, to use trickery, to equivocate. Shakespeare grasped this perfectly. In Julius Caesar, written in 1599, he used the word directly. Then again in Macbeth, around 1606, where he gave us perhaps the most precise literary description of paltering ever written. When Macbeth realizes the witch's prophecies were technically true, but designed to destroy him, he cries out, "And be these juggling fiends no more believed, that palter with us in a double sense, that keep the word of promise to our ear and break it to our hope." That's paltering in a single verse. A promise kept to the ear but broken to the hope. Truth delivered in precisely the way needed to create a lie. For centuries, this concept drifted through literature and rhetoric without a formal psychological framework. Charles Dickens captured it through Uriah Heep in David Copperfield, a scheming clerk who constantly declares himself a very humble person while manipulating everyone around him for personal gain. Technically, the words are just self-deprecation. In practice, they're a weapon. But it wasn't until the late 2000s that researchers at Harvard's John F. Kennedy School of Government took this ancient concept and gave it modern scientific teeth. The lead researcher was Todd Rogers, now the Weatherhead Professor of Public Policy at the Harvard Kennedy School. He was joined by an extraordinary team: Michael Norton from Harvard Business School, Richard Zeckhauser from the Kennedy School, and Maurice Schweitzer from Wharton. Together, they conducted 2 pilot studies and 6 experiments involving over 1,750 participants, and what they discovered fundamentally changed our understanding of deception. Their paper, Artful Paltering: The Risks and Rewards of Using Truthful Statements to Mislead Others, appeared in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology in December 2016. Here's what makes paltering distinct. There are 3 forms of deception. Lying by commission is the classic lie. You say something false. Lying by omission is passive. You simply fail to correct a misunderstanding. Paltering is something else entirely. You actively deploy true statements, carefully selected and strategically framed to lead someone to a false conclusion. Consider this example. You're selling a used car and you know the engine has problems. A buyer asks, "Has this car ever had mechanical issues?" A liar would say no. Someone lying by omission might just stay quiet. But a palterer says, "I drove it yesterday in 5 below temperatures and it drove well." Every word of that is true, and every word of it is designed to deceive. Rogers put it plainly. Paltering is when a communicator says truthful things and, in the process, knowingly leads the listener to a false conclusion. It has the same effect as lying, but it allows the communicator to say truthful things and, some of our studies suggest, feel like they're not being as deceptive as liars. And this is where the data gets genuinely alarming. In one pilot study involving 184 mid to senior level business managers enrolled in a Harvard Business School executive education course, 52% reported that they paltered in some or most of their negotiations. Only 21% admitted to lying outright. In another study of 65 managers from a similar course, 66% reported paltering in most or some of their deal-making, and 88% said they did it to get a better deal. But here's the critical finding: the perception gap driven by cognitive dissonance. 80% of these managers, when they paltered, thought of themselves as honest. They were telling the truth after all. This is a classic case of motivated reasoning. Their brains were literally protecting their self-image by rationalizing deceptive behavior as honesty. When asked to rate their own honesty in negotiation experiments, sellers who paltered gave themselves a 3.4 on a 7-point scale. Not great, but not dishonest either. The buyers on the other side of those same transactions, they rated the sellers at just 2.5. In one experiment, 83% of buyers were successfully misled by paltering sellers into believing a false conclusion, compared to only 38% in the honest condition. The deception worked, but the aftermath was devastating. Co-author Francesca Gino captured the paradox. People seem to be using this strategy because in their minds, they're telling the truth, so they think they're being honest. But the people being deceived think they're being just as dishonest as if they lie outright to their faces. And when they find out, the consequences are severe. Rogers observed that in classroom negotiations, when students discovered they'd been paltered to, they coded those people as liars and carried that anger with them for the entire semester. As Gino warned, it's difficult for negotiators to realize that the world really is small. When we use deception in negotiations, oftentimes the other side finds out. Perhaps no arena showcases paltering better than politics. Consider one of the most famous examples in American political history. In January 1998, President Bill Clinton stated that there is not a sexual relationship between him and former White House intern Monica Lewinsky. The Starr Commission later discovered there had been a sexual relationship, but it had ended months before Clinton made that statement. He used the present tense, is, making his claim technically true while being profoundly misleading. That single word was paltering distilled to its purest form. Rogers noted that politicians palter constantly. When candidates get questions they don't want to hear, they often focus on continuing to make truthful statements, but try to mislead listeners. Now here's what makes all of this even more troubling. Separate research published in Nature Neuroscience by Garrett, Lazaro, Ariely, and Sharrett in 2016 revealed that our brains actually adapt to dishonesty. Each time a person tells a self-serving lie, activity in the amygdala, the brain region that processes emotion, decreases. The emotional discomfort of deception literally fades with repetition. The researchers concluded that, despite being small at the outset, engagement in dishonest acts may trigger a process that leads to larger acts of dishonesty further down the line. This is the slippery slope made neurological. And because paltering feels less dishonest than outright lying, it may be even easier for the brain to normalize. The ethical guardrails erode faster because the palterer never technically crosses the line into falsehood. This connects to what psychologists Richard Christie and Florence Geis identified in the 1960s as Machiavellianism, a personality trait characterized by manipulativeness, indifference to morality, and calculated self-interest. High Machiavellians lack effective empathy, but possess high cognitive empathy. They understand what you're thinking, they just don't care how you feel. Paltering is a natural tool for such individuals, offering manipulation with plausible deniability built in. So here's the uncomfortable truth about paltering. It works in the short term. It helps people get better deals, dodge difficult questions, and maintain a self-image of honesty. But every piece of evidence tells us the same thing. When the truth comes out, and it usually does, the damage to trust is identical to being caught in an outright lie. Trust evaporates, relationships collapse, reputations crumble. Shakespeare understood it 500 years ago. Harvard proved it with data. The most dangerous lies are the ones made entirely of truth.